Silence is not emptiness. Silence is a presence so dense that it rearranges the emotional space around you. You were taught that words fix things, that explanations heal, that clarity comes from saying more, trying harder, proving your intentions again and again. And so you spoke. You explained. You softened every edge of yourself so you wouldn't be misunderstood, abandoned, or replaced. But something inside you grew tired. Not dramatic tiredness, not anger, a quiet exhaustion, the kind that settles into the body and whispers, "Enough." This is where silence is born, not as punishment, not as manipulation, but as withdrawal of emotional labor. And the moment you stop speaking, something extraordinary happens. The noise shifts sides. As Carl Jung observed, what is not made conscious will be lived out as fate. Your silence forces the other person to finally confront what they avoided while you were explaining. Because while words give comfort, silence creates reflection. When you disappear emotionally, not physically, but energetically, the mind that relied on your presence begins to echo. The unanswered space becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, they see themselves without your emotional cushioning. This is why silence hits harder than confrontation. Arguments still allow the other person to defend themselves. Explanations still give them material to negotiate. But silence removes the stage entirely. Now there is no one to argue with, no one to convince, no one absorbing the emotional weight for both sides. And that absence is unbearable for someone who is used to you carrying the connection. They replay conversations. They reread messages. They revisit moments where you softened, excused, waited. Not because they suddenly became enlightened, but because silence creates vacuum, and the psyche hates emptiness. Jung would say that in silence, the shadow awakens. Regret, guilt, longing, feelings that were dormant while you were present, begin to surface. Your silence becomes a psychological event. It tells the truth without explaining it. And the most unsettling realization for them is this: you didn't leave in anger. You didn't demand change. You simply stopped giving what was taken for granted. That is why silence is not weak. It is not passive. It is the moment you stop interrupting someone's confrontation with themselves. And this is only the beginning. Regret does not arrive when you are present. It arrives when you are gone, and nothing fills the space you once held. While you were there, your presence softened consequences. You absorbed confusion, tolerated inconsistency, translated silence into excuses. You made emotional chaos livable. And because of that, the other person never fully felt the weight of their own actions. But silence removes the buffer. Now there is no emotional mediator, no reassurance, no quick reply that restores balance. Only absence. And absence is not neutral, it is confrontational. The human psyche is wired to feel loss only after certainty is removed. While access exists, reflection is postponed. But when access disappears, memory activates. Patterns resurface. Emotional debts come due. This is when regret begins its slow work. As Carl Jung explained, the psyche resists awareness until it is forced inward. Silence does exactly that. It redirects attention away from you and toward the self. They begin to notice what changed. Your energy no longer cushions their indecision. Your attention no longer validates their minimal effort. Your presence no longer stabilizes their emotional world. And suddenly, what felt ordinary becomes irreplaceable, not because you were perfect, but because you were consistent. Silence exposes what words never could, the role you played. And here is the uncomfortable truth: regret is not always about love. Sometimes it is about loss of function, loss of safety, loss of emotional regulation that was outsourced to you. Your absence forces emotional vulnerability because there is nowhere left to hide. They feel uncertainty, the same uncertainty you carried quietly while staying. They feel doubt, the same doubt you silenced to keep harmony. They feel emotional nakedness, without your reassurance to shield them. This is why silence feels heavy. It does not accuse. It does not beg. It simply reflects. And reflection is dangerous for anyone who relied on avoidance. In Jungian terms, silence summons the shadow, the neglected parts of the self that only emerge when distraction ends. Regret, longing, guilt, desire, all rise together because now they must be felt instead of bypassed. Your silence does not teach a lesson. It removes the escape. And when there is no escape, emotional vulnerability becomes inevitable. This is the moment they realize something crucial. You were not replaceable noise. You were structure. And without you, everything echoes. Emotional vulnerability does not begin with confession. It begins with discomfort. And silence creates exactly that. When you stop responding, stop explaining, stop filling the gaps, the other person is left alone with sensations they never had to carry before. Restlessness, anxiety, curiosity, a subtle ache they can't immediately name. This is not coincidence. This is psychological exposure. While you were present, they could regulate themselves through you. Your availability reduced their need to feel deeply. Your understanding softened their responsibility. Your words offered relief before discomfort could mature into awareness. But silence removes the anesthetic. Now they sit with questions they used to avoid. Why does this feel so heavy now? Why am I thinking about things I dismissed before? Why does her absence feel louder than her voice ever did? As Carl Jung taught, growth begins when the psyche can no longer project its discomfort outward. Silence cuts off projection. There is no one left to blame, debate, or distract. So the emotions turn inward. This is where vulnerability emerges, not as softness, but as exposure. They feel uncertainty because control is gone. They feel longing because access is gone. They feel fear because they can no longer predict you. And fear is the gateway emotion, not fear of losing you alone. Fear of confronting what your absence reveals about them. Silence forces them to notice their own emotional dependence. The subtle ways they leaned on your presence without reciprocating. The ways they assumed you would always be there to stabilize what they refused to tend. This realization is destabilizing. Because emotional vulnerability is not romantic at first. It is disorienting. It strips away the illusion of self-sufficiency. That is why silence feels threatening to those who avoid depth. It does not chase them, it corners them. It does not demand honesty. It creates conditions where honesty becomes unavoidable. And here is the paradox. Your silence does not try to make them feel anything. It simply stops protecting them from feeling. And in that unprotected space, truth surfaces. They may never say it out loud. They may never reach out the way you once hoped. But internally, something has shifted. They are no longer comfortable. They are no longer numb. They are no longer untouched. Because silence has done what words could not. It has made them feel themselves. And once that door opens, it cannot be closed the same way again. This is why your silence is powerful. Not because it punishes, but because it awakens. Power does not shift when you speak louder. It shifts when you stop proving. While you were explaining yourself, the balance was uneven. You were invested in being understood. You were invested in maintaining connection. You were invested in repairing what you didn't break. An investment without reciprocity creates imbalance. Silence corrects that imbalance instantly, not by control, but by withdrawal of effort. When you stop reaching, the emotional gravity reverses. The one who leaned back now leans forward. The one who felt secure now feels uncertain. The one who assumed now questions. This is not strategy. It is consequence. Silence removes you from the position of emotional supplier and places you back into yourself. And the moment you stop managing the emotional climate, the other person is forced to feel its true temperature. As Carl Jung suggested, power shifts when unconscious patterns are interrupted. Silence interrupts dependency without confrontation. Now they notice. Your absence is not chasing them. Your calm is not reacting to them. Your life is no longer oriented around them. And that is deeply unsettling. Because people sense power not through dominance, but through self-containment. Silence communicates something words never can. I am no longer negotiating my worth. You are no longer asking to be chosen. You are no longer waiting to be acknowledged. You are no longer adjusting yourself to be digestible. And here's the truth most people don't say out loud. When someone realizes they no longer have access to you, respect often arrives before love. Not romantic respect, existential respect. The kind that says, I miscalculated. They may try to reappear subtly. They may test the silence. They may hover without commitment. Because silence introduces a new fear. What if she no longer needs me? And needlessness is powerful. Not cold, not cruel, but sovereign. This is why silence doesn't beg for attention. It commands awareness. And the more grounded you remain inside it, the more clearly the other person sees what they lost access to. Not you yelling, not you pleading, but you. Whole, unexplainable, unreachable in the old way. This is the moment when the dynamic is no longer about who cares more. It becomes about who stands firmer. And silence makes that unmistakably clear. There is a moment after silence settles in, when distraction stops working. They try routine. They try logic. They tell themselves stories. She's busy. She'll reach out. This doesn't mean anything. But silence is patient. And patience dismantles denial. What begins as curiosity slowly becomes self-examination. Not because they want growth, but because the mind demands coherence. And your absence has broken the old narrative. They were fine when you were present. They felt in control. They believed they understood the situation. Now they don't. And confusion is destabilizing. As Carl Jung would say, when the ego loses its familiar structure, the unconscious begins to speak louder. Thoughts repeat. Emotions surface without invitation. Dreams change. Memories sharpen. This is where the real impact lives, privately. They may not message you. They may not confess regret. They may not suddenly become expressive. But internally, something fractures. They begin to notice their own patterns, avoidance, passivity, entitlement. They see how easily they assumed your presence, how rarely they protected it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Silence removes the illusion that you needed them more than they needed you. That illusion was comforting. Without it, they feel exposed. They question their value. They question their choices. They question whether they misread the power dynamic entirely. And that questioning is not gentle. Because when someone realizes they were not the prize, only the beneficiary, identity shakes. Your silence does not humiliate them. It humbles them. Not outwardly, inwardly. This is why silence creates regret before it creates action. Regret is the psyche's attempt to restore meaning after loss of certainty. And whether they ever admit it or not, your silence has already done its work. You are no longer a voice they can argue with. You are no longer a presence they can manage. You have become a question they cannot answer easily. And unanswered questions linger. They follow people into quiet rooms, into late nights, into moments when distraction fails. That is the true impact of silence. It doesn't demand recognition. It becomes unforgettable. There is a point silence reaches that words never can. A point of no return. Not because reconciliation becomes impossible, but because you are no longer the same person who needed it. At first, silence feels like holding your breath. Then it becomes oxygen. You begin to notice something subtle but powerful. Your nervous system calms. Your thoughts regain clarity. You are no longer bracing for responses, interpreting tones, or adjusting yourself to be received. And that inner shift changes everything. Because silence doesn't only affect them. It reorganizes you. As Carl Jung believed, transformation happens when energy is withdrawn from outdated attachments and reinvested into the self. Silence is that withdrawal. While they are left reflecting, you are integrating. You stop rehearsing conversations that never happened. You stop anticipating reactions that never came. You stop hoping for emotional arrival. And that's when something becomes irreversible. Even if they return, even if they apologize, even if they suddenly see what they missed. They are meeting a woman who no longer negotiates her reality. This is the part they sense but can't articulate. Your silence no longer feels like distance. It feels like finality. Not cold finality. Clarity finality. They realize that access now requires alignment. Presence now requires maturity. Connection now requires effort. And that realization carries weight. Because silence has already rewritten the emotional contract. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are choosing discernment. This is why silence doesn't always bring someone back, but it always brings you back to yourself. And once that happens, nothing can return to the old dynamic. Not words, not promises, not regret. Because silence didn't close a door. It closed a version of you that was no longer willing to stay open at your own expense. And from here on, Whatever enters your life must meet you, not in noise, not in excuses, but in truth. Silence does not instruct, it reveals. And what it reveals is never comfortable. When you stopped explaining, something subtle collapsed. The illusion that effort could replace accountability. While you were speaking, the other person could believe change was optional, that your patience would always absorb the delay. Silence removes that illusion. Now there is no lesson being delivered, no moral being explained, no emotional hand-holding, only reality. And reality has weight. They begin to understand, not intellectually, but viscerally, that access to you was never guaranteed, that your presence was not a background constant, but a living exchange they failed to protect. As Carl Jung wrote, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. In the same way, the greatest burden an adult must face is the relationship they never fully lived while it was available. Silence confronts them with the unlived version of you they never met because they never stepped forward. And that confrontation is quiet, but relentless. They notice what they avoided, conversations they postponed, effort they minimized, depth they resisted, not because you reminded them, but because silence removed distraction. This is the teaching hidden inside absence. Not, you should have done better, but you chose not to, and choice carries consequence. This is why silence doesn't need follow-up. It doesn't need explanation. It doesn't need justification. It lets the other person arrive at the truth alone, which is the only way truth ever sticks. And whether they grow from it or retreat from it is no longer your responsibility, because silence has already done its work. It has separated intention from action, desire from readiness, words from capacity, and in doing so, it has given you something priceless. Freedom from carrying lessons that were never yours to teach. This is the quiet authority of silence. It does not chase understanding. It allows understanding to find its own way, or not at all. And you remain whole either way. There is a moment when silence stops being about them entirely. It turns inward. You begin to recognize how much energy you once spent managing reactions, maintaining emotional balance, anticipating needs that were never voiced or never reciprocated. And suddenly, silence feels like dignity. Not pride, not punishment, but self-respect settling into the body. You realize something essential. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong person. Silence becomes the boundary that words could never enforce. Because when you stop explaining yourself, you also stop asking permission to exist as you are. Your choices no longer need translation. Your needs no longer require defense. As Carl Jung believed, individuation begins when a person stops living according to external validation and turns toward inner authority. Silence is that turn. You begin to feel grounded in your own rhythm. You trust your perceptions. You stop doubting what you felt all along. And this inner alignment changes how you move. You are no longer available for half-presence. You are no longer tempted to overgive. You are no longer confused by inconsistency disguised as mystery. Silence clarifies standards. It makes you aware of what drains you and what nourishes you. And once you see that clearly, you cannot unsee it. This is why silence often feels like strength, because it is the first time your energy belongs entirely to you. And whether anyone notices or not becomes secondary, because the deepest shift has already happened. You are no longer negotiating your value. You are no longer shrinking to be kept. You are standing in a quiet certainty that says, I'm not difficult, I am discerning. And that discernment changes everything that comes next. Because from here on, connection is no longer about being chosen. It is about being met. Silence acts like a filter, not intentionally, not strategically, but inevitably. When you withdraw your emotional availability, people respond according to their depth, not their desire. Some feel challenged and rise. Others feel exposed and retreat. And this distinction matters. Those who were only comfortable when you were overgiving begin to feel uneasy. Your calm no longer feeds them. Your presence no longer compensates for their inconsistency. And without that compensation, their limitations become visible, even to themselves. This is where silence does something words never could. It separates capacity from intention. As Carl Jung understood, not everyone who wants connection is capable of it. Silence reveals that difference with precision. The emotionally unready experience your silence as rejection. The emotionally mature experience it as information. One feels threatened, the other reflects. This is why silence often leads to clarity instead of chaos. You stop chasing explanations. You stop decoding mixed signals. You stop trying to rescue potential. And suddenly, people show you who they are without being asked. Those who disappear were never grounded enough to stay. Those who hover were never brave enough to step forward. Those who grow, quietly, were always capable, just untested. Silence does not punish the unready. It simply stops carrying them. And that is not cruelty, it is alignment. You begin to see how much effort you once invested in keeping connections alive that were never reciprocal. How much emotional labor you mistook for love. How much patience you confused with intimacy. And in that seeing, your standards recalibrate. You no longer romanticize struggle. You no longer confuse tension with depth. You no longer settle for emotional proximity without presence. Silence has clarified something essential. Connection should feel mutual, not managed. And from this clarity, you move differently. You listen more than you explain. You observe more than you pursue. You allow people to meet you where you are, or reveal that they cannot. This is the quiet discernment silence gives you. Not judgment, not bitterness, but truth. And truth simplifies everything. Silence does not end a story. It reveals which story was real. By now, you understand something profound. Your silence was never about distance. It was about truth rising when noise stopped protecting illusions. You didn't become cold. You became clear. And clarity is unsettling to anyone who benefited from your confusion. As Carl Jung believed, the psyche heals when a person stops betraying their inner knowing in exchange for belonging. Silence is the act of no longer betraying yourself. You stopped explaining what should have been felt. You stopped justifying what should have been obvious. You stopped performing emotional availability for someone who never learned how to hold it. And in that stopping, something returned to you. Your center. This is why silence feels like relief, not loss. Why your body breathes easier. Why your intuition sharpens instead of doubting itself. You are no longer reacting. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer hoping to be understood by someone unwilling to listen. Your silence didn't make you invisible. It made you undeniable. Because now, anyone who comes toward you must do so with awareness, with intention, with the courage to meet you, not manage you. And anyone who cannot do that will feel your absence like a closed door they no longer have the key to. This is not punishment. This is alignment. You have learned the deepest truth of all. You do not need to speak to be powerful. You do not need to explain to be worthy. You do not need to stay to be remembered. Silence was never your retreat. It was your return. And from here on, whatever enters your life must meet you in presence. Not noise, not regret, not potential, but truth.